is Wednesday, March 8th, 2023, and we are meeting in the offices of Towards Employment located at 3301 St. Clair Avenue Northeast, Cleveland, Ohio 44114. We want to extend appreciation to Towards Employment for opening your doors and for your hospitality tonight, so thank you. It is now 7 o'clock, and this meeting will come to order. We will take attendance by voice poll. John Adams.
Present.
Chandra Benito.
Present.
James Shura.
Present.
Charles Donaldson.
Present.
Kyle Early. Present. Alana Garrett Ferguson.
Present.
Kate Kennedy.
Present.
Gregory Reeves.
Present.
Pete Van Leer.
Present.
Adriana Rodriguez.
Present.
Terry Wang.
Present.
And Sharina Zayed.
Present.
And I'm Jan Ridgway. I'm present, and I am the Chair Pro Tem tonight. I want to begin by extending a welcome to the community who have come in to join us tonight. And whether you are here in person or whether you are listening or observing by YouTube or by Channel 20, we want to welcome you. It tells us that you are interested in the democratic process. We need you in order for us to be successful with this commission. So we want to thank you for your willingness to come in and share this evening's meeting with us. I want to also say that you are important to this commission's work, that the fact that you choose to engage is very important to the success of this commission. Your input is important. So we will provide an opportunity at our meetings for anybody in the community who wants to come in and share an opinion during our public comment session. But I also want to make introductions in another way, that we have 4 people who are the wind beneath our wings, that we could not do our work without the support of our staff. I want to acknowledge them. I want to acknowledge our interim executive director over here, Jason Goodrick. I want to acknowledge Shalina Williams, our community engagement specialist. I don't think that's quite right, but Shalina here. I also want to acknowledge Ryan Walker, our senior policy analyst, and I want to acknowledge over in the corner, I want to acknowledge, you know, I came in and I looked, Sarah Anderson, who is our communications specialist. So these are our staff members. These are the people who you can reach, and information that needs to come to us should flow through them to us. And we want to make sure you know that they're there. They're in the offices when we aren't there. So their support is important, and the fact that you know who they are and know that they're there to support us is important to the success of this commission. I want to add an item to the agenda, and because we have never formally in previous meetings adopted an agenda prior to opening our meetings up, I can add this agenda as per Robert Rules of Order without a formal approval. But because the agenda went out and how that agenda was distributed does not include the item that I am adding, I will ask for a motion to adopt the full agenda. So the item that we will add to the agenda tonight would be a brief report from the interim executive director, Jason Goodrick, who will give us a status report on the commission's budget according to the most recent decision of City Council. So, knowing that you have the full agenda before you, we will add Jason Goodrick's comments right before the Budget and Grants Committee under committee status reports. So the chair would love to entertain a motion to adopt this agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you.
A
Chandra.
second.
Oh, good, thank you. The commission, both commissions have introduced a motion. It's also been second, and I just ask for a vote of approval. Thank you. So we have adopted this agenda with that one addition. No, we don't need to, yeah. I want to keep the community abreast of what's going on in this commission. I think that it is important that as we learn, that the community learns as well. We have a commission of 13 individuals who have never been on a police commission before, 13 individuals who have never worked together collaboratively to accomplish the work of this commission. And even though our meetings may sometimes seem a little chaotic, I want to tell you, I believe, and I think if you have been observing our meetings over the last couple of days, you will see that we are finally turning a corner, that we are getting to know each other, we're getting to know the strengths and the limitations that each of us brings to the table, and we are beginning to learn how to work together. And I would ask that our community grant us grace as we try to organize. And I would like to remind my fellow commissioners, as well as the community at large, that every masterpiece begins with a rough draft. And we are in that process right now. We're developing that rough draft that will get us to where we need to be to actually accomplish the work of this commission. And we would ask grace, and we say up front, we appreciate that. And we will be working very hard to make sure that we do the work that we were charged to do at the time we were sworn in as commission members. So, having said that, I want to make sure that the commissioners, as well as our public, understand what our charge is. I want to make sure that we know what the consent decree is and what our role and responsibilities are under that consent decree. So I'm going to start by reading the mission statement of this commission, and I will also read the voter findings. So if you have an agenda, the mission statement is not on the agenda, but the voter findings are. And I think that, I personally think, though I'm just a co-chair, the chair pro tem for one evening, I think that these things need to be on every agenda. I think that we need to see it. It will remind us of what our charge is, and if we should start straying from implementing that charge, we need to go back and read these statements as a reminder of why we are here. So the mission statement, the mission of the Community Police Commission is to respond to community needs and concerns regarding regulation of the city's police force and community police relations by strengthening civilian oversight to hold police accountable and institutionalizing cultural change with respect to community and problem-oriented policing, bias-free policing, and police transparency. That's our mission. It sounds simple, but there is an awful lot of work to get us to where we need to be with this mission. And then you can refer to your agenda. These are the voter findings that came out of issue 24 and helped to establish City Charter 115.5. The voters of the City of Cleveland find, based on continuing serial instances of police misconduct, that there is a need to significantly strengthen civilian oversight of the police force and to hold the police force more accountable, strengthen the police reform initiated by but grossly insufficient in the consent decree in United States of America versus City of Cleveland, U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio, case number 115 CV 2046. Institutionalize cultural change within the Division of Police and reform the arbitration process by which unelected arbitrators do not reflect the values, concerns, or diversity of the community, and who themselves often do not live in the community and therefore do not personally bear the burden of any problematic police practices, routinely undermine police accountability by reducing or reversing the disciplinary decisions. These are the voter findings that came out of issue 24 and need to be reminded. We need to remind ourselves what these findings are, and these are the findings along with the mission statement that should guide our work as commissioners. I wanted to share that and make sure that we were all on board with knowing why we exist and knowing what those voter findings are. I would like to, the chair, I need to stop saying I and say the chair. The chair would like for our interim executive director to take 15 minutes or so and talk to us about the consent decree. What we do know that those 15 minutes would not be enough to cover the full intent of the decree, but it will be a beginning, and we're hoping that there will be an opportunity for the interim director to come back again and share additional information about the consent decree. So it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you to the chair for giving the idea of introducing something that we may be familiar with because it's been here for since 2015, but the question of how familiar you need to be with it goes a lot deeper than just what you've read in the news or what we hear anecdotally about it through others. So to the chair's point, the education on the consent decree has to be much more in-depth. So this, what was asked of me is to just do a very cursory overview tonight. And I would ask the chair that you set a timer and hold me accountable to that here for that 15 minutes, so that because this can get easily into the weeds here. So I want to start with the beginning. How did we get here? So the DOJ had been to Cleveland before. You'll hear that said often, right? And it is true. The DOJ was here once before, looking at the Cleveland Division of Police, and they came to the conclusion that there were problems with the Cleveland Division of Police. At that point in time, which was, I want to say, around 2010 off the top of my head, and I didn't write that in my notes, but I thought it was important to go there because you'll hear people say that we've had the DOJ here twice. So that is a correct statement. They have been here. At that time, they wrote a findings letter, and a lot of the stuff was very specific to the jail. At that time, Cleveland Division of Police was running jails. Cleveland Division of Police no longer runs jails. And there was what was called a memorandum of understanding, that the things that were found, which were constitutional abuses specific to policing and the way Cleveland Division of Police runs its jails, and there were specific things that the Cleveland Division of Police were voluntarily going to do, and there was a lot of trust in that. So years later, the DOJ comes back in 2014, and the story of how that begins, you'll hear two different themes to that. The community, many members of the community had been reaching out to the DOJ in the interim between the time they were here the first time, right, and then the time that they actually came in 2014, and asking for them to return, saying that the Cleveland Division of Police need more than just a trust factor to do some changes. Then we had some high-profile incidences in that period of time that confirmed that need. So the community had already sent letters to the DOJ, and around the same time, Mayor Jackson also sent a letter to the DOJ saying, okay, come back. So that's 2014. And what they do is, there's a law, the Violent Crime and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. So this is 42 United States Code, Section 14141. It gives the Department of Justice the power to investigate allegations of excessive force by local municipal police departments, okay? So the law made it unlawful for government entities, such as the City of Cleveland and CDP, to engage in what's called a pattern and practice of conduct by law enforcement officers that deprives individuals of rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution or laws of the United States. The investigation was conducted jointly by the Civil Rights Division, which is an office inside the DOJ, and the United States Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Ohio, which is our regional Department of Justice headquarters, right? So they did this investigation using the power that they have under the law to do so. And so what did that investigation say in 2014? So the investigation concluded that there was reasonable cause, right? So this is a different standard than if you were trying to prosecute somebody, but what it meant was that there was enough evidence to support the fact to believe that CDP engages in a pattern or practice, and that's a terminology, these things are called pattern and practice investigations, of using unreasonable force in violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. So that pattern manifested specifically in Cleveland in a range of ways that they looked at. And there's 4 bullet points that they looked at in their investigation. Unnecessary and excessive use of deadly force, including shootings and head strikes with impact weapons. Unnecessary, excessive, or retaliatory use of less lethal force, including tasers, chemical spray, and fists. Excessive force against the persons who are mentally ill or in crisis, including in cases where the officers were called exclusively for a welfare check. And finally, the last bullet point that they listed in their summary statement was the employment of poor and dangerous tactics that place police officers in situations where avoidable force becomes inevitable and places officers and civilians at unnecessary risk. So under 42 USC 14141, the government can sue a municipality to get a court order to make changes to their police department or take a direct interest in managing that police department. But that's a very rare thing. Very few departments or cities have said, let's just go to court and see how it turns out. What typically happens is they enter into what's called a settlement agreement, and that's what we have here. So in 2015, we entered into a settlement agreement, and it's a behemoth. There are 400 paragraphs that outline specific things that need to be done to move the department or to appease the Department of Justice under the law and help ensure that constitutional policing will become the norm in Cleveland. And how is it broken down? So there is a table of contents in here, and it goes by section. So although the investigation had those points that primarily focused on use of force, right, there's a lot of things that go into that are ancillary to use of force that affect how the division operates. Everything from their training to their leadership to their culture to their recruitment, right? There's almost nothing in here that isn't a part of their operation except for how to shine their shoes. It's that comprehensive, right? So in the section, some of the major sections are community engagement and building trust, right? Community and problem-oriented policing, bias-free policing, use of force, crisis intervention, search and seizure, accountability, transparency and oversight, officer assistance and support. These are the major areas, each one of them with a tremendous amount of subsections and work that is required to be done. Supervision, general policies, implementation, assessment, and outcomes and enforcement of the whole thing. So again, 400 paragraphs, every one of them with a measurable outcome, every one of them that is evaluated as far as how far that reform has gotten at this point. So that brings me to my next part that I want to cover is you're going to hear a lot about evaluation, right, and a consent decree in general, and that is a contentious point. It always has been, right? What are we trying to achieve? And lately you're going to hear the conversation all the time, how do we get out of this thing? And so how that works is, in the beginning, people like to put out a misnomer that there was a sunset on this of a number of years. If you actually read it, that was never true, right? So there were goals, and those goals are very specific. And the only way out of it is to hit those goals. And there was never a timeline or an exact date that said, you know, if you don't hit these goals by Friday at 5 o'clock, you know, in 2026, this thing just ends. So that was something that people were hopeful about, but it was never a truth in the consent decree. So the evaluation is the parties, you'll hear that word, is the Department of Justice and the City of Cleveland. Those are the parties. And then you'll hear the monitoring team. Some of you got exposed to a little bit about the monitoring team last night. The monitoring team is the eyes and ears of the court. That's what you'll hear it called, right? The monitor does evaluations and audits of these paragraphs in progress, right? And the city will also do its own evaluations and audits, and they will send those out, and the Department of Justice will look at all of it, and they'll meet on regular basis. Right now we're in the 11th semi-annual report, so that's 11 times a report has been put out that says how much progress we've made on this consent decree. We're about to see the 12th one, March 23rd at 3 o'clock p.m. And sometime on that date, they will release their next report detailing how far we've come, right? And it's very subjective. So that brings me to one other thing I want you to be aware of is that it's really hard to assess where we actually are, and it's based on a lot of different competing opinions. So you'll see the city, the DOJ, and the monitor often have different perspectives of where exactly we are. And if you look at the monitoring team's reports, the way they evaluate each paragraph, they use a system that is very wordy. There's not a number system. There's none of that stuff. They'll say you're either compliant, non-compliant, partial compliant, operationally compliant, general compliant, right? What does that mean? Only the monitor knows. So how is a community member supposed to understand this? So what we did, and it's in your book, is, Ryan, we developed a system where what we did was assign a number to each of their compliance ratings, just so we can get a general opinion. And I'm very proud to say, you know, our work gets cited quite often. And last night at the monitoring team's meeting, you know, it was our number, the percentage from our trying to put something that people can understand on this that was quoted as how far along our progress is. So it's not a perfect system, right? Again, subjective. So we're trying to rate something that's subjective. But right now where we sit, the question that our research method uses, the number that we use is 48%, and that was based on the 11th. And that's a snapshot in time, so that's one of the criticisms of this, right? That is good when they were doing that evaluation. It's always a little bit of behind. So I would say, you know, take it with an open mind that when that was written, there's still work being done at that time, so progress is always being made forward. The question is how much progress, and the only way to measure that is between status conferences. So you'll get exposed to your first status conference end of this month. I would hope that all of you can fit that into your schedule because it's very important to get that perspective. You're going to hear each side and then also read the document when it comes out, right? That way you won't be subjected to what the news says or just cherry picks out of there. You will have as much knowledge as anyone else has if you read these documents and read those reports. So the last point I'll hit on is the actual getting out part of it, and that's very specific. It's in paragraph 400, I believe, to 401 to 403, right? So termination of this agreement. And the word that's used is substantial and effective compliance. This agreement will terminate when the city has been in substantial and effective compliance with the search and seizure provisions for 1 year with all of the remaining provisions for 2 consecutive years, right? So a couple of things there. What does substantial and effective compliance mean? Well, that's for the lawyers to argue, right? But one thing that we're lacking so far that I could say definitively that it's been the hanging point for this is proving. No one can say that there hasn't been a lot of policy change on this department, right? There's been a tremendous amount. There's been a tremendous amount of training. But what we don't have yet, and what the point of contention is where do we stand data-wise? How has that gotten down to the street and is it effective change, right? We know it's paper change, there's no doubt about that. We know there's been training change, but what does that mean on the street? And that is the data that is going to be contested. That's what you guys will get a front row seat to over the next several years, is how that data is used to try and make the argument of how far along we actually are. So those are the very specific things, 401, 402, and 403. Those are the only ways you can get out of it. There is no making up anything beyond that. So familiarize yourself with this. I'm here for any questions about it. I know that's a very high-level overview, and it's a heavy read, but the best way to get caught up again is to follow those monitor reports closely and make sure, if you're able to, at 3 o'clock, be there for the next status conference hearing, which is coming up shortly.
Would you repeat the date? Was it March 23rd?
March 23rd at 3 o'clock p.m., and that will be at the federal courthouse downtown. What's that? I don't have the courtroom on my notes here, so I think, what is it, the 9th floor? 19, yeah. So, and if anyone, if you just let me know ahead of time if you're planning on coming, we'll make sure we meet you in the lobby and get you to the right place. But you won't miss it. There'll be a whole bunch of people going up there, and most of us are going to the same place. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I overlooked one thing intentionally and the other one not intentionally. We are behind on our minutes. We have been involved in lots of city council meetings, the staff have, and so we will table the approval of minutes to our next meeting. I do want to, before we begin the rest of the meeting, I want to briefly review meeting decorum. We have adopted Robert's rules as our parliamentary procedure for our meetings. And given that, what I would ask that before you speak, you're recognized by the chair. I would also say that it's okay if we disagree on an issue, but we must be agreeable and be able to work together, to collaborate to get to where we need to be. And I will ask that we do not engage in side conversations while someone is speaking. Please be recognized by the chair before you speak so we can run an efficient meeting and decrease the perception of chaos in our meetings. So thank you. We will be open for community comment. If we have anyone who want to come up and make a comment, this is the time that you can do that.
Okay, I would like to make a comment. Oh, thank you. Okay, I would like to make a comment. This was a good idea to put this. Oh. My name is Brenda Bickerstaff. My brother Craig Bickerstaff was killed by police January 26, 2002. And I'm also with Citizens for Safe Cleveland. We were one of the authors of the petition. However, this was a good idea about Charter 115. But being a former board president myself, I do know that you have executive sessions. And because it states in here for the sake of transparency, I know it's not a requirement for you to have minutes. But do you think you should consider having minutes? And that's just for the sake of being transparent, okay? I'm also glad you brought up the Robert rules. That's very important when you're doing this. So, because I've been getting a lot of feedback from the public about this organization. And I'm glad you mentioned that you're in the rough draft. You are. And you're taking strides to make it better. But I'm really concerned about the executive sessions and not having nothing, no notes and no minutes. So would that be something that you would consider or think about, or something that you would like to do in the future?
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? This is your time. We won't be answering during the public comment phase, but we're taking notes, and these questions can definitely go back to either the specific committee that would be dealing with this, and we would be able to get back that way. Don't let that be a deterrent, though, for you coming up and speaking, because we still need to hear your comments and any concerns you might have.
So, Clark Nelson, I work for the Famicos Foundation. Excuse me. I do community engagement and business liaison. I'd like to know, how can we support you guys? You know, is there any course of volunteering or any ways that we can work together?
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Jackson. I represent the Black Shield Police Association. Basically, I have a question rather than a comment. Two questions. One, how far along are you in your training? And two, when do you anticipate being able to get into substantive matters where you can make decisions on?
Some of the committees will be giving reports shortly, and I think there will be some information that we won't be answering directly, but there will be some information shared tonight in committee reports that could answer some questions. Are there other comments? If not, we will consider the public comment session closed. I just love hitting that. Okay. Let's look at listen to the status reports from our committees. I didn't receive any calls from any of our committees saying that there were actions that needed to be made during the night's meeting. So everything that comes forward under our status reports should be just that, a status report with no action required of any information that is given. So we will begin with the internal training committee that Alana Garrett Ferguson and Kyle Early are co-chairs.
So our status report, and I think this can answer some of the questions around training. We decided that we want to do all of the training on that document that we were given. All of the legal training will be completed in an 8-hour session, which we are hoping to have scheduled Saturday, March 25th. We'll be working with the staff and the legal department at the city to make sure that that can be completed. On March 22nd, that is another full commission meeting. We are hoping, I've already reached out to the director from OPS to see that they are able to come to provide training that night. OPS is the Office of Professional Standards, and that we have representatives from the Civilian Police Review Board that night, so we're also waiting to hear back to see if they'll be able to attend March 22nd, and that will fulfill a large portion of those two sections for the training. March 15th, which is when we typically have our training meetings, which are the off Wednesdays of our full commission meetings. We've dedicated those to training because we're really trying to expedite the training process as much as we can. So March 15th for 1 hour, we're hoping that we can have the general grant making training done, because we do have those grants. A lot of those grants have a city compository point that we really, there's some things that we have control over of deciding the parameters around, but the other parameters, the city really needs to be able to answer those questions. As far as like a timeline of when we could see ourselves being completed, what we have decided is we're doing our best diligence to make sure that we are able to get training done as soon as possible. The police portion is going to take a lot of time, and a lot of us work full-time jobs. We have other commitments, so we are hoping that each month we're able to dedicate 8 hours on a weekend day to complete at least a big chunk of training during those 8 hours. We're also working with Cleveland Police Department to really understand what it is in their day-to-day actions. So when we talk about training, it's not just us sitting down in the classroom and getting the book stuff. We also anticipate us having the opportunity to go down to their gymnasium and them actually show us how they are trained as well, to kind of have that immersion experience so that we can have quality training. So we're hoping that our training will be done at least within the next 6 months, because there is just a lot of dense content, but we're making a lot of headways with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and I think that, that your report will answer some of the questions that were raised during public comment phase, so thank you. Let's hear from the interim executive director regarding the budget status report and City Council's most recent action before we have the Budget and Grants Committee report.
All right, to the chair and the commissioners, some of you are aware of some of the things I'm about to say, but others may not be. So you know that the steps that led up to this process, right? But I'll go over it with the people who are listening in the community. So the commission established a budgets and grants committee, which reports to this. And during that period, we had myself and city executives come to discuss budgetary needs and what's possible in the budget. At that time, the finance director had submitted us the budget that they had agreed to, meaning that the Mayor Bibb had agreed to as well. And that number was around $2,300,000. So the commission agreed that would work. Primarily, the bulk of that money is going to, the operational component of it is going to staffing, right? So the commission agreed that staffing has a few points that need money injected into. The first one being having the ability to pay a true executive director position and a true assistant director position. So there were some management things that needed adjustment, right? Making sure that staff pay, who is already here and coming forward, is competitive both in the market and with peers at the city. So that was another concern. And then also there was a great deal of discussion about an attorney. And the hope in that was that because the city had presented that figure, which was about $775,000 for personnel, that would give us the ability to hire a full-time attorney onto staff with benefits that we would be able to use in a multitude of ways to help support the commission's need. The committee then forwarded that budget, agreeing to what the mayor had proposed to us, and subsequently there was a vote by the entire commission to forward that budget to council as the official request from this commission to council. 115 gives us the authority to request resources independently of city interference. That's the way I'm going to sum it up. It's not the exact wording, but it's there to a degree, right? So that's what we did. So you asked me as the executive director to go before council and argue that budget that you had passed. And that's what I did. And if you watch the video, I spent about 2 hours, and I believe that I said everything that you asked me to say and advocated as best I can for why we need these positions. Unfortunately for us, council a week later had what's called a reconciliation hearing, and during that hearing we were not consulted, we were not called, we were not asked for any additional questions during the time period when they made this decision, but they had begun the conversation amongst themselves and with the mayor's office without participation from my office or any of you about how to reduce that budget. And to be fair, we did ask for more money than the minimum amount allotted to us under the law. There is a minimum there, right? So that minimum is there to protect in the future the ability of anyone to use funding to hamper our work or take us to a funding amount where the work can't be done. That's why the minimum is there. But I want to be clear, it was the floor. And it's not inappropriate to ask above that floor. We didn't ask for a lot above that floor. We asked for what the law says we can ask for, right, in 115, is if we can justify an ask, we should ask for it. It says we have the ability to go above and beyond that, right? So the denial was based on the belief that, one, we're too new. This is just what I've heard, and they have to see what our operational needs are first, right? And two, that they have the legal right to bring us to the floor. And they are not wrong about that second part, but it is a common practice for departments to go ask for things. They do it all the time. Every other department in the city, including Mayor Bibb's administration, goes and asks for what they need to get the job done. So we didn't do anything appropriate asking for that money, and it was a reasonable amount of money to do that thing, specifically to get an attorney. So where we are right now is the cuts that I got back, that was a deal done between council and the administration, and again, we were not at the table for that. As far as I'm aware, no commissioner has told me that they were consulted in this, right? And it was cutting back what you all had voted for yourselves without us at the table.
Want to give respect to the speaker. No side conversations, please.
And so what they did was remove $180,000 from full-time personnel, right? And we estimated that an attorney would probably cost us around $100,000. Attorney at the city was. They reduced, so in line with that reduction, it automatically brings down the benefits category. So because of that reduction, we lost $47,336 from benefits for full-time staff. So that's the brunt of it. And then also, as you know, you asked me to advocate for an increase in the professional services line item. That's where you would be able to attain outside consultants to do projects, research, whatever you need to be to amplify staff and your ability to do that. They brought us down to the original proposed amount, which was $14,444 less. So that's where we sit as of right now. It went through its first read in council, which means that the next time it's read, it will be voted upon sometime later this month. They have to pass a working budget by April 1st. And at this point in time, it looks like this will pass council. And the next step would be the mayor would have to sign it and agree to it. Right now, there is no indication that that won't happen and occur. So it looks like this cut, as of this moment, is trending to happen for us. And that when I use the word cut, cut means a cut from what you guys voted on, right? So just to be clear on that, it is a cut from my perspective. You asked me to advocate for this money, they cut it down to the minimum amount.
Thank you. We will be asking for a report from Budget and Grants Committee next, but I think that the report that the Executive Director has given would be appropriate for this committee to bring to your table at your next session to see how, what the impact would be, whether there is a need to reprioritize the requests and the amounts of money. So I just want to share, I wanted the interim director to share what happened with that budget, where the cuts were, what the next step is in the process, and I think that it would be appropriate for it to be referred over to Budget and Grants, working with the interim executive director to determine the next step with this budget. I understand that we might have an opportunity in June to go back for an amendment, and so if that is the case, we need to be prepared to do that if we feel that that's appropriate. So yes, if that could go back to your committee, it would be good. So all yours for your report. Thank you.
To the chair, welcome everyone. So the Budget and Grants Committee met on March 3rd in our main office buildings on Perkins Avenue. And so what we're tasked with is, well, we thought we were done with the budget, but clearly we are not. So we will have to reconvene at our next meeting. And to the chair's point, I know that part of our concern was if we got the floor, then we probably need to figure out how to reconfigure what we have to best meet the needs for the commission and the community. Um, but because we had passed the budget and we were waiting for the decision, we focused on the grant process. So in the charter or in the one of the documents we're working from, there are several areas that we need to make decisions on before we can even move forward with grant making. So those categories are guidelines, the goals for the program year, the number and the amount of grants, the eligibility requirements, the funding process, and measurable outcomes and reporting requirements. So clearly we can't cover all of those things in one meeting. So our approach has been to attack several of those items in each meeting. So in the past meeting, what we looked at was eligibility. We discussed the number of grants, and we tried to flesh out the guidelines. So in our meeting, in terms of eligibility, there was discussion about, and we haven't decided, and this may be something that other commissioners feel as if they have ideas about it or approaches that would be best for the commission regarding grants. But we sort of talked about sort of like a ceiling for organizations that we would like to fund. So if, for example, I think a number that was thrown out was an organization with an operating budget of 500,000. Is a 500,000 operating budget too high, just right, definitely not too low, right? So there was discussion about that, and so if there are opinions that other commissioners with experience in this area have, I think we would welcome that input from the commissioners because we didn't make any definitive decisions. So everything that we're reporting is open to the full commission to provide their input on. So we also flirted with the idea of maybe funding a certain percentage of an organization's operating budget. So that's also out there. And I won't get into the every point of the eligibility discussion, but we did not come up to a full conclusion on that. But that was the discussion that we were having. And just from my notes, we talked a lot about wanting to ensure that there was innovation, the community impact, the sustainability, the community need, making sure that we are considering the communities that are most impacted by policing issues. And then we also talked about ensuring that we also are considering vulnerable populations. So youth, the elderly, differently abled people. So we had a lot of discussion because we felt like we needed to put all of those ideas out on the table before we could move forward on deciding what the eligibility requirements would be. One of the things that came up as we were discussing the budget, the grants, was sort of, we talked a lot about, wanting to make sure that grants were sustainable. We also were concerned about making sure that we do not design our grants in a way where we are excluding members of the communities that are doing good work. So there was a dialogue about what do we do with individuals. And we talked about, they would need to find a fiscal agent. And there wasn't, I don't think, total agreement on that point, but it was a discussion that we were having. I think it was a discussion worth having because in the end, these grants are for the community. And so we want to be in compliance with the law, but we also want to make sure that we are allowing these grants to serve the needs of the different communities throughout the city of Cleveland. So a tentative thing that we sort of, I won't say we agreed on, but we were pretty much has a lot of consensus around was an idea of maybe designing grants in a way where we could think about the type of grants that we want to dish out, and maybe if we could come up with categories for different types of grants, then perhaps those different grants would have a different range of what we would reward. So the categories that we're working with are starter grants, which could be for new organizations, and we didn't really flush out the details of each category. Um, Sustainability grants. So maybe there could be an organization um, that is doing good work, but like to Commissioner Kennedy's point, sometimes we have organizations that are doing really good work, but they can't sustain themselves. They can't pay their people. They can't not fully operate their organizations. And so we were thinking about making sure that if there are organizations that have shown an impact on the community, we would like to support them to continue the work that they're doing. And then the third category that we talked about was maybe an expansion grant. Like I said, all of this is just kind of brainstorming and throwing ideas out there, but if there's an organization that may have shown both impact and sustainability, and then maybe that could be an opportunity to help that group to expand their program into other parts of the city. So we sort of just we talked about those things in terms of the types of grants that we would like to give out to, or not say give out, but we would like to basically award to the public. There was discussion, and I think we are going to be on a tight timeline in terms of when we decide on all of these issues, when we bring them to the full commission for votes, and then when we start the process of actually having community organizations or individuals apply. So our hope is that as we are figuring these things out as a committee, that we may be able to bring our agreements piecemeal to the group, so that we're not just bombarding the commission with everything at one time, because there's just a lot going on. But an issue that we really would need some input on, I think, from all the commissioners, and Ms. Bickerstaff was involved in this discussion as well, is how high do we go with awarding grants? So there was a discussion about maybe 5,000 as a low for some areas, but then there was discussion about if 5,000 is enough. I mean, I know personally I could spend $5,000 real quick. So as an organization, we weren't sure if 5,000 is too low, but we also don't just want to waste money and give it away. So we're just trying to find the right balance. So that would be it would be nice to get some input. I think you can just contact anyone on the budget committee that you have a good relationship with or you feel comfortable talking to, and they can bring that to the committee. But what was presented by co-chair Rodriguez was possibly like a $10,000 to $70,000 range, and there was dialogue about if 70 is too high, should we do 50, should it be 25? So we are just at a point where we're trying to figure out the right balance for the grants in the committee. And something else that we discussed and that I think we need to consider, especially those of us who may be on the grants committee in the future, is we have to be mindful that we have to manage all the grants that we distribute. So the idea of giving away only $10,000 grants, $10,000 is a lot of money, but if we have $1.1 million, that's a lot of $10,000 grants to give out, and then the staff has to manage it. In light of what just happened on the budget committee from the city council, we did not get the support that we needed from them, and so we have to be mindful of how we issue this money out. I know that Commissioner Zaid also was considering that we should be open to giving away a larger amount of money as well, and I agree with her on that. But again, that's something that we have to bring to the full commission, and before we make decisions on what we're going to present, it would be nice to get as much input as possible, because as I said, we're going to be on a tight deadline, and we may not have, if we want to meet that deadline, it would be nice that these sort of caucusing discussions are had before we come to a full meeting, and then all of a sudden we're stuck because there's a disagreement over something. So I'm just going to encourage everyone on the commission to feel free to contact any member of the budget committee. Serena's pointing at me. But you can contact me. I will respond, but we are a committee. So you can contact anyone on the committee. And then lastly, um, I think that, so the number of grants, and lastly, the only thing I think I didn't say was that I think that, and please someone on the committee, correct me if I am incorrect, but I think that we haven't voted on it, but I think we're gonna side with one round of grants for this first year. So any input you have on anything that we discussed and we talked about, we are encouraging everyone to give us as much input as possible because, with the exception of perhaps, when we get into these cases, this is the other really significant part of what, the commission is going to be tasked with doing. So even though we have a committee, I think it's really important that we have as much input as possible before we present anything to the full committee. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair would like to encourage the commissioners to respond to Commissioner Adams' request for input. I think what we don't want to happen is that this table is used for your committee meeting. So it's important that you attend their meeting, even though you can't make a motion or vote, you definitely can give input at that meeting. As the chairs of that committee, you can also set up work groups. You have that authority on the parliamentary procedure to set up work groups that could involve not only other commissioners, but it could also involve someone from the community that you may consider an expert who can come in and give you some direction on how you can do that. But I think the expectation is that you would bring to this table your recommendations for approval, not for, not for prolonged discussion, and not to use this table as the opportunity to discuss what you want, but definitely for feedback in terms of response to a motion that's brought to the, brought to the full assembly. Yes.
To the chair, I just wanted to clarify when the next Budget and Grants Committee meeting is, and if there's a date that that Dr. Adams would like to receive the feedback by.
I believe we decided on the 20th at 3 p.m. I remember because I'm going to be on the West Coast, and so I have to be ready to log in at 12.
Okay, thank you. Another question? Yes.
Oh, and then when would, to the chair, when would the committee like feedback by? Oh, when would the committee like feedback by? The feedback you requested?
To the chair, we are meeting on the 20th. I am comfortable with a few hours of feedback. I can't speak for the other commissioners, but I would be comfortable as long as I had a couple hours to kind of read over everything, consider, prep, maybe talk to co-chair Rodriguez and executive director Goodrich. I would be comfortable with a couple hours, but I know that that's not the norm for everybody. So I think the other commissioners might want more time, but if you're going to contact me, I can tell you I can do the work. I can go over everything in a couple hours.
I would think that if there is any discrepancies in that comment, that you can work with your co-chair, come up with something, and use government email to share that with the full commission. So the next status report should come from the hiring committee. So I am requesting Commissioner Charles Donaldson to respond, please.
To the chair, good evening, everyone. The hiring committee has not yet met, primarily because the hiring committee is not a priority for us at this time. We're focusing on rules and training. My thought is that the hiring committee could potentially have their first meeting sometime in April, but I'll definitely keep everyone updated.
Thank you. One of the things that the chair wanted to do was to list our standing committees and our temporary committees so that each of the commissioners would know what our, committee list is and our public as well. So the remaining standing committees, the outreach, the police policy, the police training, and the police accountability, these have not been established yet. But I did add them to the list of committees that would eventually have to give reports. We just want to kind of begin to drill into our psyche the fact that these are existing standing committees, but they have yet to be established. So the floor is now open for old business, and we will hear from the chair, Commissioner Wang, from the Rules Committee.
Thank you so much. Good evening, and thank you for everyone that's joining us online and in person. As you may know, we are in the process of passing the rules, which are very important for the structure and momentum of this commission. I'm right now going to, in lieu of giving a summary by myself, I'm just going to read for everyone into the record the executive summary of the changes we made since our last meeting. So our last meeting was on March 2nd. And on March 2nd, 2023, the Community Police Commission's Rules Committee met to once again consider the contents and proposed edits to the draft CPC Operations and Procedures Manual, Section 1, created by Interim Executive Director Goodrick. This memo supplements the memo sent on 2/15/23. As an additional note, the draft rules are attached in their entirety. After content is approved, staff will clean up the document, check for spelling errors, ensure words that were eliminated are completely removed, and renumber the table of contents. So these are minor things that will be done to finalize the draft. In addition, the Rules Committee requested that a system be put in place that delineates permanently which sections are law and cannot be edited in the future via motion. Please focus on changes and not minor errors that still need correcting. So here is the reference of changes that we made on March 2nd. Section 1.31, under ethical responsibilities. The committee deferred to the Law Department for final wording, and it is pending review and comments by Assistant Director of Law Delonte Spencer Thomas. Once comments are received, they will be added to the section without changes. Section 1.32, professional responsibilities. We added language that further explains, quote, equivalent productivity activities, unquote, giving examples such as appearing on panels and research projects. Section 1.44, leadership. The election of co-chairs is clarified with the following language. Terms will be 1 year, and co-chairs shall be selected no later than February of each calendar year, with the exception of the first year. The procedure and timeline for the first year, 2023, shall be as follows. Announcement of ad hoc exploratory committee on March 8th. This committee will determine voting procedures and interests for the co-chair positions. Nominations shall be put forward and speeches will occur on March 22nd. The co-chairs will then be elected on April 12th. Section 1.45, committees. The word sub was removed from all references to committees. In addition, the following language is added to this section. For the first class of commissioners, police-related committees will be formed after initial training occurs. The commission shall make every effort to complete the minimum amount of training required to establish these committees within 90 days of the adoption of these rules. If there are more than 5 commissioners interested in any committee, the co-chairs of the commission will have final authority in determining how the committee is seated. Section 1.71. General meetings, agenda point number 11 for adjournment. Language was added to ensure meetings end on time. Adjourn. Agenda should include a start and end time. Any extension of time should be via motion and have a clearly stated purpose and should include an amount of time. A meeting may adjourn early with the conclusion of scheduled business. Section 1.7 under meetings. A separate section was added for, quote, executive sessions. It was created adopting the law department's wording and counsel as it reads. This is in reference to a question that was asked earlier. And at a regular or special meeting, the commission may enter into an executive session as follows. For a motion followed by second is made to enter into executive session. The motion states the applicable provision of RC 121.22, Section G, Section 1, Subsection 8, for entering into executive session. A majority of a quorum of the commission agrees by a verbal roll call vote. The commission shall not vote or make any decisions during executive session. The meeting shall begin and end in an open session. The minutes of the regular or special meeting at which the executive session occurs shall reflect the motion to enter into executive session, the statutory basis, and the roll call vote. There shall be no minutes kept in executive session. Commissioners may keep personal notes taken for their own convenience or memory that are not circulated and are not minutes and not public record. Section 1.82, method of voting. Language was changed to make, quote, roll call voting the mandatory method of voting. Section 1.9, amendments to rules and operating procedures. The following language was added regarding adopting or amending rules or procedures. A commissioner or the executive director must raise the issue or propose change to the chair of the Rules Committee. The manual amendment must be read and discussed and voted on as part of the agenda of a Rules Committee meeting prior to the amendment being introduced to the full commission. For the initial adoption of the manual and adoption of any proposed amendment to the manual to become effective, 2/3 of the permanent members, that is 9 out of 13 members, must vote in favor. And lastly, with the exception of the first adoption rules, which will take immediate effect, any subsequent rules changes in the manual take effect 15 days after their publication in the official minutes of the meeting. So now that I've given you an overview of the changes that we went through on March 2nd and made, I move to adopt the rules section 1. Anyone second?
So Commissioner Wang has moved to adopt the rules, the section 1.
Right.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? The vote, all approve. Let's do this by voice vote. Where's that list?
Roll call vote?
A roll call
Chair.
voice, yeah. Is that sheet passing around for signatures? Yes, so I make sure I call everybody's name. Commissioner Adams. This is for regarding the motion on the floor to accept section 1 of the rules or our bylaws.
I have a point of discussion, if I may.
Okay, the floor was open for discussion.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Benito,
Aye.
Commissioner Shura,
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson,
Aye.
Commissioner Early, Commissioner Garrett Ferguson, Commissioner Kennedy,
Aye.
Commissioner Reeves,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Leer,
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Aye.
Commissioner Wang,
Aye.
Commissioner Zayed,
Aye.
and Chair Jan Ridgway, aye. So the motion carries with all yeas except 1. So it should be recording in the minutes that way, and it was all done by voice vote as per requirement under the bylaws. So that's major. We have now gotten this first part of our bylaws, section 1, passed. There was a lot of work that went into that. We owe a huge appreciation to the people who were on that chair, who shepherded that through, who asked a lot of questions, who had a lot of discussions, couple of meetings that went way over time to make that happen, but it happened. And so I want to extend appreciation to the people on this particular committee that made this, this first section possible. And so we now have a set of bylaws. And with those bylaws, we can move forward on some other things. I recognize Commissioner Adams.
To the chair, I would like to change my vote to nay.
Okay. Okay, that's the one thing I haven't checked, but I guess it's okay. We just need to change it to nay. You have that right to do that. Yes.
So this is a first for me as well. I've never had
Yeah, I
this
haven't
before
had
me,
that
so we
before.
can, we'll note it in the minutes,
Yes.
and then we will default to Robert's rules to see if that's acceptable. If nothing else, he's on the record as requesting that.
Thank you for that clarification. I've chaired many meetings, so that's new to me too, but that's why we have Robert's Rules of Orders. I go back and check it as well, so I appreciate that. Commissioner Wang.
I just want to note that our next rules meeting will be March 13th from 5 to 7 p.m. and we will be going over Section 2. Definitely, certainly the media policy. I'm not sure if we will get to the evidentiary process, but I know that it seems like a lot of, just rulemaking may not seem like the most fun thing, but it's very important, especially that second part. So we welcome the public to attend that meeting. I do also want to say that, these rules were made in an effort to maintain the sections that may be under controversy to some, and there are differences of opinion, I'm sure, on the commission, are because of we received guidance from the law department. And we hope that we are maintaining, in the effort of, in the spirit of transparency, I will say that we should make every effort to understand the legal requirements and statutory requirements for entering into an executive session. I think the focus has been sometimes on whether minutes have been taken, but there are very limited reasons, specific, and have to be captioned in order to enter legally into an executive session. So, and we will follow those rules in the spirit and in the intention of transparency for the public to understand what is going on in the commission. So I just wanted to note that. But please attend our meetings, on the March 13th if you are interested in participating or giving comment on that process. We will have a public comment period for that. Thank you.
Okay, and my apology for mispronouncing your last name. No, it's not okay, but I do ask for forgiveness for that. We can move to new business, and we would like to begin. Oh, you have another? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I did a quick Google search, and I just wanted to share what I found on changing your vote. So what I found, and take this with a grain of salt, it's a very quick Google search, but a member may change their vote up until the chair announces the result. And then after the chair announces the result, a member may change their vote as long as there's unanimous consent of the body. But once the chair announces the next item of business, it is not possible to change an individual vote.
So that was two different comments. One is to once the results of the vote have been made, that was one something. Or the second one was when you move to the next item on the agenda. So I had announced the results of the vote, but we had not moved to the next item on the agenda. So there's a conflict even in that explanation. So we would check that, and we can get back to the group. The record should show
Point
that,
of clarification. A vote can be changed without the unanimous consent of the body before the chair announces the results, but after the chair announces the results, but before the next item of business, person can still request to change their vote, but it has to have the unanimous approval of the body.
Okay, I think for the sake of moving forward on, with this meeting, and I'm very concerned about efficacy tonight, we will have your vote reflected in the minutes, and we will make sure that we understand how this works under Robert's Rules of Order, and we will move forward at that point. But at this point, your vote would definitely show as a nay in the minutes. So under new business, we have our staff person, Shelley. Yes, you want to come forward? Microphone, yeah.
Well, this is awkward. I can't do this. I don't know how I'm gonna sit right here. Okay, so very quickly, again, the project is entitled The Conversation. It is about how police violence impacts the mental health of the Black community. It originally started several months ago. As a matter of fact, it started as a community conversation for Black men only, and it was under the previous iteration of the commission, Dr. Terry Eccles. He was gonna, head that conversation. But then their term ended. But the idea did not. It lived on. And so as you guys were becoming, so is this project. And so quickly, I began to talk to different community members and learned quickly that you cannot just have a community conversation for men only, not with a topic this heavy. It had to be addressed in a more holistic way. And so that's how it kind of expanded into the 4-part series that it is now. And so the conversation is a 4-part series that will address how police violence impacts the mental health of Black women, how it impacts the mental health of Black men, how it impacts the mental health of Black youth. And then in July 28th, we will have a culminating conversation that will address how police violence impacts the mental health of the entire community, including police officers as well. This sounds like it's breaking up. I feel like I'm not. Okay. Okay. And so there you have, like I said, the original proposal. There have been some tweaks, as the planning of this event has happened. I do have a proposal that I send out to. It's a shortened version of that I send out to people that I'm, asking funding from, because the project is quite costly. But you can, overlook that at your leisure. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. We can have a voice-to-voice conversation or via email. or you can come up to the office and we can talk about it more extensively. Oh, so let me say this too. We are partnered with several community partners, and that's further along toward the end. Black Lives Matter is our fiscal agent for this. I don't want to go into detail about all the partners, but every single partner that you see on there, they're either part of a planning committee, like the Executive Planning Committee, or the Mental Health Planning Committee, or they're a funder. And so, correct, not the CPC. There's been no funding asked from the CPC. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that what's really important for this commission is to make sure we support this, this four-part series. Your presence, I think it will add tremendously, and we will have a lot to gain from participating. One of the things that Mrs. Williams did not mention was the fact that the conversation for women is for women only. The conversation for men is for men only, so that even though we are encouraging attendance and participation by the commission, those two sessions will be broken up by gender only. So I just wanted to add that to her comment. So we should support this because it has tremendous value to each of us as a commissioner. Yes, please.
To the chair, on the Shelley, through the chair to Shelley, on the last page under the fundraising and sponsorship committee and targeted sponsors, CPC commissioners is listed on there. So what is the intended role for CPC commissioners when it says fundraising sponsorship committee $291,000, and then we are listed as committed to getting 100 people? Is there any other fiscal? Since it's listed under fiscal, so that's why I'm asking.
No, it's not that.
Okay.
I'm asking the CPC to support coming out and sharing it with your network, people power.
Okay.
I need you guys to bring people to these events.
Okay.
No money,
Right? That's what I need.
no money,
Thank you for that clarification.
no money. Zero money. I gotta make that clarification. Zero money from you guys. We just want your support. Thank you.
I just want to remind everyone too that let's take Ms. Williams up on her offer. So if you have it in your hand, take some time, read it, and then if you have additional questions, please contact her directly for that input. So the last item on the agenda will be ad hoc committees. As chair tonight, I have the purview under Robert's rules to actually establish 2 ad hoc committees. I believe strongly that while training is a major portion of what we should be doing right now, the organization must continue to move forward as well. So the chair is establishing 2 ad hoc committees. The first one would be one to actually poll all of the commissioners to determine who is interested in being one of the 2 co-chairs. And that ad hoc committee would bring that slate of potential co-chairs back to the full committee at the 22nd meeting and present that slate of potential co-chairs to the full body. The floor can then be open for anybody else who wants to be recommended to be considered as well. And then you have an opportunity to actually do your speech if you want to convince the other members of the commission why you should be considered. And then at the first April meeting, we would take a vote and elect the 2 co-chairs. So the 2 people who would be working to poll you to determine if you have interest in this one of the 2 co-chairs. One will be Charles Donaldson and the other one will be Caitlin Kennedy. These are the 2 commissioners who will work on determining your interest and coming back to present a slate. I just want to say this as well, that our staff member Ryan Walker will also be available to work with you to establish any process that we need and to also answer any questions that might help us to facilitate this process as fast and as efficient as we can. The second ad hoc committee would be one that will poll the full commission and to determine which of the 6 standing committees and the 2 temp committees you might be interested in. This will be an anonymous process. I've had some initial discussion with staff member Ryan Walker, but he will be on board to help you determine the process to do that polling and be able to determine where the highest interest is for these committees that we have. And then they will be brought back for discussion. Hopefully, they will also be able to bring a process back for how we could move forward to make that happen. If there are any conflicts, the bylaws that you have accepted tonight will give the decision to the 2 co-chairs to make. And so the 2 people who will be working to develop the process and doing the polling for the committees will be Sharina Zayed and will be James Shura. They will be the 2 people who will be working to determine the interest of the commissioners for the committees, working with Ryan, who has already begun to develop a process for it. So I know I've gotten some questions already about this process, and this is what I want to say about this, is that by having commissioners do this polling and talking to each other, it allows us to learn a little bit more about each other. And we need to do that in order to be able to work well together. Secondly, we are in a position, what's the old FUBU statement, where we can develop a process by us, for us, and we should be able to come on board to support that process. And the third piece of it is, at some point, we have to learn to trust the process. At some point, we have to learn to trust each other as we began to develop this organization. So these ad hoc committees will allow us at least to begin that. You will be talking to each ad hoc committee member, will be talking to every commissioner, and to determine the interest. And you can even talk to them about their experience, whether there's leadership experience there. There would be no commitment as far as the committees. It's a polling exercise to determine who is interested in what. And whether we will have 11 people interested in one standing committee and maybe 1 interested in another. Either way, we will abide by the bylaws that was approved tonight that says that each of our committees must not exceed 5 members and no less than 3. And so this will give our commissioners an opportunity to actually serve on more than 1 committee. So we trust you with the process. We trust you with the ability to talk to your fellow commissioners and to poll them and see where their interests may rest, knowing that this is not a commitment. This is not where you will end up. We are polling for interest. And I would ask that you trust the process. At some point, we have to learn how to trust each other and work together to accomplish the work of this commission. So, having said that, it is now 7:28. And because the formal adjournment is already scheduled for 8:30, you have a question? Oh, go ahead. No.
Yes, sir.
No, you please.
In terms of the next chair pro tem, if we need to do that.
We can do that. Do we have a volunteer for the next chair pro tem?
I would nominate Adriana Rodriguez if she's willing.
You okay with that? All right. I don't think we have taken a formal motion on it. Usually if somebody, huh?
Do we need a second?
Well, are you offering it as a formal motion? Because in the past, we just asked for a volunteer. We didn't do it as a formal motion. But if you want to present it as a formal motion, and
Whatever's appropriate.
okay, so do we have a second for that formal motion?
I second.
Okay, so the motion has been made and second that Adriana Rodriguez would be our next chair pro tem. We're just going to go straight to the vote. Do I have to do this? Where is that? Every vote must be, where is that piece of, huh? Yeah, I'm trying to find that vocal. Yes.
For the ad hoc committees, we don't have to do the Robert rules for that?
Robert Rules actually allows the chair to appoint ad hoc committees.
Okay.
It gives you 5 different committees that a chair can establish, and the ad hoc committees, that's one of them, and the chair can do that, yeah.
Okay.
So let's take a vote on Commissioner Rodriguez being our next chair pro tem. Commissioner Adams?
Aye.
Commissioner Benito?
Aye.
Commissioner Shura?
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Early?
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson?
Aye.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Aye.
Commissioner Reeves?
Aye.
Commissioner Van Leer?
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Aye.
Commissioner Wong?
Aye.
And Commissioner Zayed?
Aye.
And I, on behalf of the Chair Pro Tem tonight as well. So, be nice to have this little piece to keep us in order. We are coming in, we made a concerted effort tonight to establish an agenda that would help us facilitate an expedient meeting, also an effective meeting. And I want to say, I recognize you, I want to say that I appreciate the efforts of this commission to make sure we do that. And I'm looking forward to the results of the work from the ad hoc committee. Yes, Commissioner Zayed.
Because we do have time left, I noticed that there were some community members that came in after the community comment. I just wanted to acknowledge them and see if they wanted to make any comments.
Okay, so I will say this, that we moved the public comment section from the beginning to midway the meeting to make sure that we did not, that if people came in, that they would still have time during the course of the meeting to make a comment. I have no problem doing that, but I would encourage the public to come in and make their comments within the scheduled time for public comment. So we don't have to do it, come back, go back, and do it again. So because you didn't know that, because you hadn't seen the agenda, we are open to whatever comments you have to make.
Test.
Okay.
Good evening, this is Lou.
Yes, Lou.
I know the Robert's Rule is a popular one for people to conduct meetings. However, in the community, not everybody's time or their thinking or their experience will fit exactly like Robert's Rules requires. So for example, I would like to ask something or say something, that's because something came up during the meeting. So this is the number one point. Secondly, I really appreciate we have this opportunity that we will have a forum conversation about how policing or even violence of any kind affecting certain group of people. But would commissioners open to the ideas in the future? We also have this mental health talk on Latino community, all different Asian community, the unhoused community, or other people also having negative impact by wrongful policing. I wish you guys can think about that. I know right now there may be a set program, the budget, everything set, but I wish we can have that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone else? No? Yes.
Okay, I just want to make a comment here. It seems to me as if you are dissecting Robert's Rule of Order. You made it applicable to everything else except the first vote. That's not the way it should be. As Commissioner Adams said, yes. It should remain yes. You cannot go back and change it. So I would suggest to you to move that vote back to yes, and only one nay. Because if you make all the other votes based on Robert's Rule of Order, you did it right. But his vote remains abstain on your committee. I just want to bring that up.
While it's our procedure not to respond directly to public comments, I want to say we appreciate that. And I think because we weren't really sure, I had not had that experience before where a vote was changed, and our interim director had not had that experience before. We weren't sure. So when we determine what that is, and thank you for sharing that, we will definitely follow whatever that procedure dictates. Thank you. If there's no other business, yes.
Just one thing real quick that we don't have to discuss tonight, but something I wanted you all to think about. So in the training meeting, we were reminded that we do 2 full commission meetings a month because there is supposed to be a training component in each one. And so now that we're doing it this way, we're trying to cut back because we have no free weeks with the way these trainings are scheduled. So just think about a way that we can really knock it down to every committee in 1 week. So we at least have a week without training. Just something to think about. Oh, sorry. To the chair.
So maybe we can charge staff to look at schedules and see if it's a way to make that happen. I know that we have some training already scheduled, so it may not happen, you know, within this next month, but it may be something that we can move toward. But if the staff would look at that and see how we can make that happen. Okay, so yes.
I just would like to add a comment for consideration by the full commission. And I think it's important to note, since we have so much business, administrative business that we have to get through. It is, and I'm very happy, thank you so much, Chair, for creating these ad hoc committees and these different processes. Tonight's meeting went very well. But I hope that we're all remembering that the work of policing is going to come up very quickly for all of us. And I am really hoping that after these ad hoc committees and these votes of chairs and different things have actually taken place, that we can then divert our attention to the real reasons in which this commission was actually established. I think it's really disheartening to know that 4 of our main committees will not be open for several months. And so I'm just really, really hoping that we can take some time and really reflect as a commission why we are here, what is the work that we have ahead of us, and really consider who we are serving and working for, and that hopefully after the votes for these ad hoc committees, which are just about chairs and quite frankly doesn't really have much to do with why people are coming out to our meetings, that we actually will be able to move to do that good work and honor the citizens of Cleveland and honor the people and actually getting to the police work. So I just really want to put that out there. I think that all of us have good intentions and our heart is in this work. but it's just very disheartening that those 4 committees will not be open. My heart stands with a lot of the community and how you guys feel frustrated amongst these things. So I'm just hoping as a commission, after these votes of chairs and that business is taken care of, we will actually be able to honor you guys and honor the votes that you have had, because that is why we all are here. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. The chair appreciates your comments, and I'm pretty sure that other commissioners here appreciate it as well. But I don't think that it becomes one or the other. I think we must organize and get that out of the way, and then we can, at the same time, continue to do the training. I think the election of the chairs and the selection of the committees, that will not prevent us from also doing the training. They can go hand in hand, and I think it was Commissioner Adams that said something to the effect that we ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So I don't think one automatically negates the other. And I think that it was at the behest of the group that the decision was made not to establish the police committees until after the training was done, so that people would have an idea of what it is they're supposed to do. But I definitely think it is something worth discussing, but I don't see that one moving in one direction with getting the organization in order would prevent us from getting the training in order. Yeah, and it's the one thing about ad hoc committees, they're very temporary. They are extremely temporary. You do the work, and then the ad hoc committees are dissolved. The work is done, and we are seeing within a month that the chairs will be in place. So I just wanted to respond that way in terms of our understanding of how this work should move forward. Yes, Commissioner Wong.
To the chair, I did want to note that part of the amendments that we made in the rules was that the police-related committees will be formed no later than 90 days. I realize that in order to honor our commitment to the community, I believe that we have to be prepared, judicious, and fair. I think we have a wealth of knowledge here, diverse skills, but all of us can learn from this process of understanding policing and the community in our work. And I cannot emphasize more, this is not in an effort to delay any need in the community. And for the record, I just hope that that these committees are not even needed at this point, because I hope that nothing is happening in the community that would need that type of high-level response. But it was made in an effort, I think, to allow us to gain the skills to serve the community in the fullest and most judicious capacity possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would just like to add this, and we can adjourn, actually. We've added some things that were not on the agenda, but I would like to say this, that, and I would like to echo your comment. We have a commission of 13 highly qualified people who have experience, people who have training, and that as soon as we can finalize the appropriate training for the police, because it's very specific what we have to do, we should be able to move forward on that. But I just think that we just need to keep in mind that because of the people who have been selected for this commission, we should be able to move this organization forward and gain the training and the knowledge we need to be effective commissioners as well. And it does require commitment. You know, even something as simple as reading all of the information, the documents that's sent out prior to coming into this meeting, so we don't have to have those discussions at the table. Getting back to whoever the chair is to let them know whether whatever your committee has to report, whether it will come forward for action or whether it will come forward for information. So all of us have some responsibility to make sure that this commission move forward as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And so I want to say thank you. I appreciate your your willingness to allow me as the Chair Pro Tem to change things around tonight, to be able to provide some information from Jason, the Interim Executive Director, that is really important in our understanding the consent decree. And I want to say that it was a very interesting meeting last night, listening to the two law firms that are up for consideration by the City of Cleveland. I think it's important that you have an opportunity tomorrow night. I think it would be virtual tomorrow night to at least hear it, because that work also impacts our work, and we need to be prepared to respond. The nice thing about last night, we were able to ask questions. And as I said, some of the people in the audience from Issue 24 were there, and there are lots of decisions that must be made, and it should be made based on what this community needs. And so I just want to share that and encourage you to at least go online tomorrow and listen to the community forum that will determine which law firm becomes our next monitor. I think that's important because we have to work with them. You had your hand up? You okay? Okay.
And this relates as to the monitor. I just wanted to say, is this on? Okay. Why this commission is so important. On my way in here, an article was just released, and the article that came out was about Officer Frank Grimbeck, who was one of the officers that murdered my 12-year-old cousin, Tamir Rice. Now, mind you, Timothy Loman was fired because he lied on his application. But Frank Grimbeck only received a 10-day suspension, and he remained employed by the city. The article that just came out today, he was suspended for 25 days for using derogatory comments against community members. So this is how important this is, because if these officers are continue to remain on this commission or remain on this law enforcement department, doing the things that they do, it's imperative that you all understand and see this, because he should have been fired. He should have been fired, and then this would have been prevented. But now he's back in the media again, violating policy, violating procedures, turning off his body camera. 19 Action News just covered it, so read it. This is why this commission was created, and that's why it's important that you all get it right. Thank you.
Get it right and get trained. And I'm gonna keep saying it. And maybe I'm out of turn, but this is critical. You gotta get trained so you can understand the GPOs. There's a former cop right there. So you can know those GPOs and you can be on point. Stop trying to jump in feet first.
Okay, so the chair would love to entertain a motion to adjourn. Yes.
I did want to know, thank you, Ms. Goldsby. Am I correct to understand that for his involvement in the death and shooting of Tamir Rice, he received a 10-day suspension? Yes. And for derogatory comments to the community, he received a higher suspension of 25 days. So these, I believe, this is a great example of some of the policy work and the GPO work that is necessary. I do believe that it requires a lot of detail and a lot of knowledge. I know we have, a former Cleveland police officer on there, but, these are, for the training is necessary. I feel like sometimes we get training, just to get to a particular point that we can do something, but the training is a knowledge building. It's aligning ourselves with the purpose of what we're trying to do. And it takes time. These GPOs are very long. The consent decree is 150 pages. It takes time to read and process these things. So again, I want to emphasize, I don't think anybody is trying to slow down the work of the commission, but to deepen it and make it substantive and long-lasting so that we can fully honor our commitment to the community. Thank you.
So may we have a motion to adjourn? You all are gonna make me. The intent was these other committees started this amazing turnaround, coming not over going past the, we have a few more minutes. Go on, Commissioner Benito.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And I just want to say thank you for your fantastic facilitation tonight. I just wanted to add one additional comment about getting the work started. And I know that our rules chairperson talked about that we have a meeting this coming Monday, the 13th, from 5 to 7. And what we are starting to do is to look at part 2 of the manual, which will go into some of the policies and procedures that will be used by some of the police committees. And so I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that this work is starting, but it's starting with some of the building blocks. And so I think for commissioners who, I would just encourage commissioners to, if you have the time or if you're able to come, or as not a witness, but a community member to watch the meeting or to observe the meetings, the recording later. That is one way that this police work is starting, and we will be starting that on Monday.
Yes.
I move that we
Commissioner
adjourn.
Reeves.
Second.
It's been moved and second. There's no need for a vote on it when it has been scheduled to be adjourned anyway. Thank you. Love you.
Thank you for allowing me.
Thank you.